Welcome to Exploring Biliteracy and Measuring Language Growth and Academic Achievement. This is the 2022 Summer Professional Development for Dual Language Immersion, or DLI. It's designed as an asynchronous workshop for 3 contact hours. Let's begin with an overview of what we'll be doing. Our goals and objectives are fairly straightforward. Educators will become familiar with the criteria in various domains of the Teacher Effectiveness for Language Learning, or TEL framework. We'll also interact with tools and or resources designed for DLI programs and classrooms to support pedagogy and policy, and you'll have a chance to reflect on your own practice. Our agenda overall is here on the slide. We'll begin with a welcome and some introductions. The first section will be titled Exploring Biliteracy, as you saw on the title slide. We'll be looking at the TEL planning domain, and the tool or resource is the Guiding Principles for Dual Language Education. The next section is Measuring Growth and Academic Achievement, where we'll be looking at the TEL Learning Tools domain, and for our tool or resource, the Thomas and Collier Research Executive Summaries. After that, we have a few wrap-up and reminders. The asynchronous workshop today will use a Qualtrics survey. This will allow you to keep the pace you want as you progress through the asynchronous workshop for this summer. You can click on the Qualtrics survey link at the bit.ly you see on the screen, bit.ly/22summerpd for DLI, which is also posted in the DLI webinar series Canvas Hub at bit.ly/DLI webinars. This will allow you to answer the questions as you go, and that space in the DLI webinar series Canvas Hub also has links to all of the TEL domain documents and the tools and resources that we're using, as well as some hyperlinks that will be of use to you throughout. Always remember, as we work through this asynchronous workshop, you can pause this recording and end your survey whenever you want so that this PD works for your schedule. Let's talk about completing our asynchronous workshop. Every educator who completes a workshop and submits their Qualtrics survey by or before September 15th, 2022 can earn 3 contact hours or 0.3 CEU for licensure renewal. Submissions are checked periodically, and the contact hours will come in the form of an email with an attached certificate of completion. We anticipate having all certificates emailed by the end of September 2022. Always note, public school units, or PSUs, which means our districts and charter schools, must approve professional development offerings in all formats, whether they're virtual like this, asynchronously or synchronously, blended or hybrid, or even in person. So be sure you get that approval based on what you need to do for your PSU. In your survey, we'll begin with some introductions. The first, of course, is where are you joining us from? You see that North Carolina is divided into 8 different regions. And in the survey, once you indicate you're an educator here in North Carolina's public schools, you'll have a chance to indicate which region you're in, as represented by a State Board of Education positions as well, and then what PSU and what school that you're in. If you're outside of North Carolina or in some other type of schooling besides our North Carolina Public Schools K-12, you can also indicate that, and you'll be able to share the same kind of information about where you're joining us from. The second part of our introduction is for you to describe your DLI programs. So which of the terms on the DLI webpage at bit.ly/ncdli-info do you use to describe the types of immersion and programming you offer? You see a screenshot there, so if you take that link and go over to our DLI page for North Carolina, you'll see under the Terms tab for additional resources, the types of immersion, either one-way or two-way, which is defined by the population of students that are being served in your program, and then the type of program, which refers to the amount of time or the structure of your program. And you can see your different options there that you can choose from. Once you've answered the introduction questions, we'll move on here to our first section focused on biliteracy. Remember, for biliteracy, we're going to look at two items. The first is the tell planning domain that you see pictured there on the far left of the slide. And then the guiding principles for dual language education. It's in its third edition, but it's a resource that's available for free to support DLI programs. Let's take a quick look at our section overview for biliteracy. We're going to begin by reflecting and implementing PL6, or Planning, Criteria 6, in our K-12 DLI programs and pedagogy. PL6 is the teacher plans opportunities for students to process language in the interpretive mode. Remember, when we look at our tell criteria statements, the reason we have an asterisk next to teacher is because teacher in that sentence applies to any DLI educator, regardless of what role you have with your DLI program. You could be a teacher, you might be an instructional coach, maybe a media specialist, a principal, a central office coordinator, or some other role with students. After we look at the tell planning domain, we will explore and use a biliteracy tool for PL6. And like I said, that's that guiding principles for dual language education, the third edition. And we're going to focus specifically on strand 3 of that particular tool. Again, we're focusing on biliteracy, and strand 3 instruction is the most appropriate one for biliteracy. So let's begin by reflecting on the tell criteria and sub-criteria that we're tackling for biliteracy. Remember, PL6 is the teacher plans opportunities for students to process language in the interpretive mode. Before we jump into that, we also want to remind you about how what we're focusing on with biliteracy is supported by our state standards. If you're joining us from outside North Carolina, of course, I'm sure you have similar standards for language development and language acquisition. But here in North Carolina, for the North Carolina World Language Essential Standards, standard number 2 specifically looks at interpretive communication, which is reading, listening, and viewing. So, standard number 2 is understand words and concepts presented in the language. Keep in mind, this is a wide array of things because when we think about reading, listening, and viewing, there are lots of resources that we could bring in the classroom for our students to use so that they can begin to understand words and concepts presented in the language. You'll see there on the screen an overview of our World Language Essential Standards in North Carolina and the weave graphic that shows how our 4 standards, including interpretive communication, which is number 2, is woven together with our strands about connections to language and literacy, connections to other disciplines, and communities. This helps us be aligned to our national standards, but also makes sure we get a complete picture of language development in a second language or the world language that we're focusing in on. As we dig a little bit deeper into interpretive communication, I wanted us to take a look at what it says about unpacking the strands for standard number 2 in our North Carolina World Language Essential Standards. This screenshot is right out of our unpacking document for DLI programs, and you can get this from our NCDPI World Languages Standard Course of Study and Supporting Resources page, which is linked in the DLI Webinar Canvas Hub for you to use. Specifically, it looks at interpretive skills, that reading, listening, and viewing, in each of our strands to give you more of an idea of what that would look like and how to think about that when you're reflecting on what you do in your classrooms and programs for dual language immersion. I'll let you pause and read the screen, but notice the different types of resources and materials for interpretive skills when you're talking about connections to language and literacy, or connections to other disciplines, or the community strand. Also look at the different types of reading, listening, or viewing one might do. There's mention of things like everyday topics, current events, social events, personal viewpoints, social media, but there's also a look at things like reading of all types, textbooks, instructional materials, fiction, nonfiction books, websites, wikis, all of that, especially when we think about building background knowledge in all of the other content areas that you focus on in a DLI program. And finally, when we talk about our community strand, again, a wide range of materials, including broadcasts, television and radio programs, and all of that, but also the component of how you bring interpretive resources into the classroom that are designed for native speakers of the language. Likewise, we also need to talk about support for interpretive communication from the North Carolina English Language Development or ELD standards, particularly for our multilingual learners or MLs in two-way dual language immersion programs. And these are students who come to us already speaking the DLI program language at home, and some of whom are English learners. So if they're classified as multilingual learners, they're actually learning English as we go. Please take a moment and look at this graph from our North Carolina ELD standards and consider when we think about interpretive communication, that reading, listening, and viewing again, what that looks like when we're thinking about English language development. We look at standard 1, where we talk about language for social and instructional purposes, as well as the language for the different content areas, language arts, mathematics, science, and social studies. Think about that, and also, just like before with the World Language Essential Standards, there's a link where this information is posted, our asynchronous workshop, where you can see the NCDPI English Language Development Standard Course of Study and Supporting Resources page, particularly the ELD repositories and Standards Hub that contain a lot of materials designed for our multilingual learners, and in this case, who are in two-way DLI programs. All right. Now, before we go on, and we really start exploring our TEL planning domain criteria, we want you to go ahead and download the handout. This is a resource that's available for free. We have, of course, posted it in our DLI webinar Canvas Hub for you to download, and that's what that PDF Google link is, of course. But you can also go directly to the TEL framework page if you want and download the TEL planning domain criteria or any of the other TEL domain documents that you would like. So go ahead and download a copy for yourself from one of those places and skim the 4-lettered subcriteria for this session's focus. Remember, it's PL6. The teacher plans opportunities for students to process language in the interpretive mode. Pause this recording as you need to make that download and skim over PL6. All right, let's take a look at our TEL criteria for PL6 and its subcriteria. A focuses on the teacher selects strategies to ensure language input is comprehensible. That comprehensibility and comprehensible input is a very key component of our language acquisition process. And so it's always good for teachers to think about their pedagogies and strategies that they're using to make sure they're making that input comprehensible to their students. B is the teacher selects resources that allow students to interpret, analyze, and interact with authentic materials. Remember, we want authentic materials that are designed for native speakers of the language that we're focusing on. And they're going to be doing different things with them. We've mentioned reading, listening, and viewing, but also interpreting that. How do they understand things that they have read or listened to or viewed? Also, how do they analyze it? And what do they think about? What aspects of it do they need to analyze to move forward? And then how do they interact with it, either on their own or in other ways as they are processing those authentic materials? C is the teacher plans how to introduce and explain activities and concepts using the target language or the DLI program language. This is very important. Of course, we want to stay in our DLI program language as much as possible. This is a good opportunity for students to truly be immersed in the language. And so it's important that we as teachers think through how we're going to introduce activities with comprehensible input, the language that the students understand, but in their DLI program language, and explain the activity we're doing and the concepts they're learning, all of that, while staying in the language. And finally, D. The teacher plans to frequently check that students understand the message of written and spoken text. Because if you want students to read, listen to, and view, you also have to make sure that they are understanding or interpreting those messages the way you need them to so that you can move forward. All right, now that we've seen PL6 and you've had a chance to think about it, let's talk about implementing PL6 in K-12 DLI programs and our pedagogy with those programs. So this is our first question, and obviously it's in your survey for you to complete there. When you think about your DLI programs and your classrooms, which of the sub-criteria are professional strengths for you? Now, you might have several of these, but we'd like for you to focus on one or two. And consider what your professional strengths are in whatever role you have with DLI programs and DLI classrooms. Once you do that, we'd like you to explore this further by choosing one of the subcriteria that you think is important for K-12 DLI programs or classrooms. And for this next part, it can be one of the professional strengths you chose, but it doesn't have to be. It's up to you which one you want to focus on. They're all on the screen again, and of course I know you have your handout, and in the survey they're visible too. But you'll choose just one of them. Then, in 15 words or less, explain why you think this subcriteria that you chose is critical for your DLI program or classroom. Or if you have multiple DLI programs or classrooms, consider that as well. After you do that, in 30 words or less, describe how you will use this information about the subcriteria and why you think it's critical for your DLI programs and classrooms, how you will use that information to inform your practice in this coming school year for 2022-2023. Again, pause while you do this as long as you would like so that you can submit your answer and put it in the blank that's provided on the survey for this part of the asynchronous workshop. Now that we've had a chance to look at the TEL domain document that focuses on biliteracy, let's focus on another biliteracy tool for PL6. We told you, of course, that we're going to be looking at the guiding principles for dual language education, and specifically strand 3, which is focused on instruction. Take time right now, if you haven't already, to download a copy of the Guiding Principles for Dual Language Education. Again, it's in our DLI webinar series Canvas Hub. It's linked there, and you've got a link right there where you can go to that. Once you download that PDF, scroll down until you see that link, and then take a look at the section of the asynchronous workshop where we'll focus on strand 3 instruction. Now there's a whole chapter in the PDF book about strand 3 instruction, and the templates that are used for self-evaluation are in Appendix A. So there's two different places there in the PDF that you need to focus on. You may decide you want to have this open on another screen, print it out, or in some other way set it up so that you can easily access the strand 3 section of the book as well as Appendix A if you need to. That's up to you. Again, pause as long as you need to get this set up for the way that works best. Let's begin by looking at sort of an overview of the Guiding Principles for Dual Language Education 3rd edition book. As you can see, there are 7 strands total. So there's program structure, curriculum, instruction, assessment and accountability, staff quality and PD or professional development, family and community, and support and resources. There's a lot to explore there. We are just going to focus on, of course, instruction, the 3rd strand. And you need to know that each strand that you see on the screen has 2 to 5 principles that go with it, and then each principle has 2 to 8 key points that are lettered A through H. When you look at those key points A through H, there's actually 4 progress indicators that you can rate yourself on or rate your programs on, whether it's minimal alignment to the key point they're making for that particular principle and strand, partial alignment, full alignment, or exemplary alignment. So that's kind of how it's structured. Let's take a closer look at that. As I said, there are 7 strands with 2 to 5 principles each. Here's an overview, taken directly out of Appendix A, that looks at all 7 strands with all of their principles, 2 to 5 for each one. Of course, we're focusing on strand 3. It has 4 principles, as you can see, and you see up there on the screen what they are, as well as in the copy of the document that you're working with for this asynchronous workshop. Just as an overview of where to find things, we wanted to talk to you about Strand 3 instruction. And so in your PDF, on the numbered pages within the PDF, you'll find that the main sort of chapter on Strand 3 of instruction is on pages 45 through 56. It begins with information about language and literacy development in general, and that includes things like language input, oral language development and instruction, literacy development and instruction, and language of instruction and separation of the languages in a DLI program. There's also information about grouping practices there and references to the research and information that's informed the development of Strand 3 for instruction. What follows that overview of Strand 3 then are a series of rubrics. That's on PDF pages 57 through 69. These rubrics are where you'll find the progress indicators with those key points. That'll be featured on our slides to follow, and we'll tell you exactly which page you'll find each one on as you work through them. Finally, additional information about Strand 3 instruction is in Appendix A. On PDF pages 132 to 146, you'll see the blank templates from Appendix A for self-evaluation. And that covers all 7 strands, but the Strand 3 blank templates are actually on pages 137 and 138. So they're fairly compact there in Appendix A. All right, so set that up so that it works for you as we continue through the Strand 3 instruction portion of our asynchronous workshop. All right, as we go through this will be an opportunity for you to look at Strand 3 as a strand, but also each principle and the key points, and then assess those with 4 progress indicators. You see here how they're arranged: minimal alignment, partial alignment, full alignment, exemplary practice. And the questions you see in the blue box towards the bottom are the questions you're going to be reflecting on and answering for yourself as you do this section of the asynchronous workshop. So, 2 key questions. Which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment? Remember, there's those 4, from minimal alignment to exemplary practice. And what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? Because when we reflect on our programs, especially using a tool like this, we want to think about where we are, that's the first question, but also where we want to be. We want to move forward or make progress in some fashion. So when we're looking at the rubrics, and there's a lot of keywords and phrases that you can focus in on and think about, but we really want you to use those to think about where are you going? How would you get to the next level? So let's get started with Principle 1. Here you see a screenshot of those self-evaluation components that are in Appendix A, where everything's sort of all together in one spot. And Principle 1 for Strand 3 is instructional methods are derived from research-based principles of dual language education and ensure fidelity to the model. So we're going to be exploring the key points A through G that go with that in these next slides. And again, asking you to ask yourself those 2 key questions. And then at the end of Principle 1, you'll have a chance on your survey to share a bit with your reflection and what you want to do next. All right, Principle 1, Key Point A, which is featured, by the way, on page 57, states the program model and corresponding curriculum are implemented with fidelity. Pause a moment to read, either on the slide or in the PDF version of the book that you've got, what it means to be at minimal alignment, partial alignment, full alignment, or exemplary practice for this particular key point in Principle 1. When you're ready, answer for yourself. Which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment? Which of the 4? And then what are some key words or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? Feel free to use anything that works for you. Jot notes on a Post-it note or some other piece of paper. Use a Google Doc or an electronic version. If you've got a printed out version of this, you can just circle or highlight those particular keywords as well as which progress indicator you chose. I'll be walking us through all of the additional key points for Principle 1, but again, as always, pause this recording when you need to think more or reflect more, or just to accommodate the pace you want to do for this asynchronous workshop. Principle 1, key point B, which is on page 58, states, instruction incorporates appropriate separation of languages to promote high levels of language acquisition. And once again, think about which progress indicator you would choose for your DLI program at this moment, and what are the keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level. Principle 1, key point C, is standards-based academic content instruction is provided in both program languages in a coordinated way. Again, there's a lot to read here when we think about minimal alignment through exemplary practice, but we want you to think, which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment? And what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? Principle 1, key point D, which is on page 60, is explicit language arts instructions provided in both program languages, is based on language-specific standards, and is coordinated across languages to ensure biliteracy development. Take a moment to look at minimal alignment for that, partial alignment, full alignment, and exemplary practice. Then ask yourself the two questions. Which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment? And what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? Principle 1, key point E, is on page 60 and states, instruction that promotes sociocultural competence is provided in both program languages in a coordinated way. Again, take a look at the four different versions and consider, which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment? And what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? Principle 1, key point F, is teachers who provide support services like special education, gifted education, ESL, and specials, art and music, for example, align their instruction with a dual language model. Pause here for a moment to let you know, too, that in North Carolina, of course, we sometimes call these support services different things. So our special education is exceptional children. We have gifted education, but it's usually referred to as AIG, academically and intellectually gifted. And our ESL, or English as a Second Language programs, are transitioning to be ELD, English Language Development programs. You also might have a variety of specials in your class, art or music, or even others that are available to your students. So consider those support services and those specials and how they align their instruction with the dual language model. Again, there's 4 progress indicators. And we're asking ourselves, which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment? And what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? Key point G for Principle 1 is, when delivering instruction, teachers take into consideration the varying needs of students with different language learner profiles. For example, native speakers, second language learners, new arrivals, students who are already bilingual in English and the part language, and so on. Again, we're considering what assets students bring to our classrooms and how you consider that with differing needs when you're thinking about English language acquisition and the acquisition of the DLI program language. So which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment? And what are some key words or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? All right. We've just finished Strand 3, Principle 1, and now I want you to turn back to your survey after you've done all that reflection on all of our key points, A through G for Principle 1. And in your Qualtrics survey, choose one of the key points, A through G, from this principle that you want to use in moving your DLI program to the next level. So you reflected on each one, but now we just want you to pick one of those out of the 7 and indicate that on your survey, which one you'll be focusing in on. Remember to consider your answers to our key questions, like which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment, and what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level. Once you indicate which progress indicator you're moving to with that particular key point, then you've got some time and space to go ahead and explain why this key point is your focus for improving biliteracy instruction in your DLI programs or classrooms. And also, describe how you will implement this information into your practice in the coming school year, 2022-2023. Again, you can pause this for as long as you need to complete this particular activity for Principle 1, and then start again when you're ready. All right, let's move on to Principle 2 of Strand 3. Principle 2 states, instructional strategies support the attainment of the 3 core goals of dual language education. So I want you to pause for a moment, think about where that is in your PDF, an explanation of that, as well as the rubrics and so forth we'll be using. Just like before, we're going to take a look at each of the key points. So key point A for Principle 2 is on page 62 and states, teachers integrate language and content instruction. Once again, we have our 4 progress indicators, and you're reflecting on which progress indicator you would choose for your DLI program at this moment, if you're evaluating or assessing where you're at, and then what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level. Again, pause and take as much time as you need to read through this, choose your progress indicator, and your keywords or phrases that are one level up from that progress indicator to see how you would move forward. Key point B for Principle 2 is teachers use sheltered instruction and other pedagogical strategies for bilingual learners to facilitate comprehension and promote language and literacy development. Again, read through and answer your questions. Which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment for this particular key point? And what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? Key point C for Principle 2 is instruction in one language builds on concepts learned in the other language. So here we're looking at that transfer of learning. And again, which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment? And what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? Key point D is instruction promotes metalinguistic awareness and metacognitive skills. Take a look at those progress indicators and decide which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment for this key point, and what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level. Key point E for Principle 2, which is on page 65, is instruction leverages students' bilingualism by strategically incorporating cross-linguistic strategies. And here we get into the heart of using language, whatever language or languages students bring to us in the classroom, and using that strategically to help them and to consider the assets they bring with them. So which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment for key point E? And what are some words or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? Key point F for Principle 2 is instruction promotes an awareness of language variation. Here we have some different kinds of ways to think about biliteracy and language variation in the classroom. Read through those And then determine which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment, and what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level. Key point G is teachers use a variety of strategies to ensure equitable participation among all students. Consider that for a moment. There are a number of strategies posted here in the different progress indicators that you use probably in different ways. So which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment for key point G? And what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? Key point H for principle 2 is teachers use a variety of strategies to promote the sociocultural competence of all students. So here we make a bit of a shift. We're looking at that sociocultural competence, which is critical to supporting bilingualism and biliteracy. Take a moment to read through the progress indicators for this key point, and then choose which one that represents your DLI program at this moment, and then what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level on this key point. That's it for Principle 2 and their key points. So now you go back to the Qualtrics survey. Just like before, choose one of the key points from Principle 2 that you want to use in moving your DLI program to the next level. Think about your answers to those two questions on every key point that we looked at. Indicate which progress indicator you're moving to after you choose the key point that you want to focus on. And then, just like before, in 30 words or less for each of these, explain why this key point is your focus for improving biliteracy instruction in your DLI programs and classrooms. And also, describe how you will implement this information into your practice in the 2022-2023 school year. Again, pause this recording and work as long as you need to on this particular question and these activities here for Principle 2. Let's move on now to Principle 3 of Strand 3 instruction, which is instruction is student-centered. You'll notice this principle has fewer key points than before, but we will follow the same process as we have. Key point A for Principle 3, which is on page 67, is teachers use active learning strategies in order to meet the needs of diverse learners. Once again, like some of ours before, on your rubric, you see a number of strategies. You may call them slightly different things, but a whole variety of strategies to think about for this. And then you focus on the two questions. Which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment? And what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? Key point B is teachers create meaningful opportunities for sustained language use. This is very important for students to practice the language that they're learning, the DLI program language. And again, we have a number of ideas here within the rubric on the different progress indicators to think about how teachers are creating those opportunities for students to use the language. So which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment for key point B? And what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? Key point C is student grouping maximizes opportunities for students to benefit from peer models. So again, think about this. Think about your student grouping practices within the classroom and within your program, and consider your two questions. Which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment for key point C? And what are some key words or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? Key point D is instructional strategies build independence and ownership of the learning process. Again, take a look at the different descriptions of each progress indicator and answer the questions. Which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment for key point D? And what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? All right, that's it for Principle 3. So once again, you go to your Qualtrics survey, you choose one of those key points from Principle 3, and then you consider what you answered and indicate which progress indicator you're moving to for that particular key point. And once again, in 30 words or less for both of these, explain why this key point is your focus for improving biliteracy instruction in DLI programs or classrooms, and then describe how you will implement this information into your practice in the 2022-2023 school year. Pause as long as you need to on this recording and in your survey to complete your answers. Let's move on to Principle 4 of Strand 3. This is our last principle for Strand 3, and as you can see, there are only 2 key points. Our focus for Principle 4 is instructional staff effectively integrate technology to deepen and enhance the learning process. Key point A, which is on page 69, states instructional staff use technology tools to engage all learners. Once again, there are a number of examples of different kinds of technology tools. You may have the same ones or similar ones or even different ones that you use. Consider your question here. Which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment for key point A? And what are some keywords or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? Key point B, which is on the same page, is students use technology to display their understanding of content and to further develop their language and literacy skills in both program languages. Again, take a moment to read what's here in the progress indicators for that particular key point, and then answer the questions. Which progress indicator would you choose for your DLI program at this moment? And what are some key words or phrases that would help move your DLI program to the next level? All right, we're at the end of Principle 4 and the end of this section, actually the asynchronous workshop. So just like before, go to your Qualtrics survey. You're going to choose one of the key points from Principle 4 that you want to use in moving your DLI program to the next level. Indicate which progress indicator you're moving to, and then explain why this key point is your focus for improving biliteracy instruction, and describe how you will implement this information into your practice in the coming school year. Again, pause as long as you need to, and when we come back, we'll move into the next section of our asynchronous workshop. All right, let's get started with the next section of our DLI asynchronous workshop, measuring growth and academic achievement. For this, we're going to be using 2 tools, the TEL Learning Tools domain document and the Thomas & Collier Research Executive Summaries. Just as an overview, once again, we'll be reflecting and implementing the TEL Learning Tools domain. We're going to be focusing on LT4 and its subcriteria. LT4 is the teacher provides students with tools and processes to reflect on language growth. As always, the asterisk, of course, in reference to teacher in LT4, applies to any DLI educator, whatever role you have with your program or your DLI classroom. So maybe a teacher, maybe an instructional coach, a media specialist, a principal, a central office coordinator, or whatever you do in support of DLI. Once we look at that, we'll also explore a tool for measuring growth and academic achievement, specifically the executive summaries from the Thomas & Collier research that was done in North Carolina a few years ago. So let's begin by reflecting on the TEL criteria and its subcriteria. As we begin this, of course, we want to take a look again at our standards and think about what we mean by language growth. In our proficiency-based North Carolina World Language Essential Standards, we have proficiency outcome expectations in those standards using the ACTFL Proficiency Scale. Those ACTFL Proficiency Guidelines or Scale describe for each proficiency level what students can do with language and with that particular skill. You see the inverted pyramid that goes from novice low at the bottom all the way up to distinguished for different proficiency levels. Of course, it's an inverted pyramid because as we move up from novice low to novice mid and then novice high, as well as into the intermediate range or advanced ranges, language becomes more complex. So it takes a little bit longer to move from each sublevel, low to mid and then mid to high, each time we move further up. That's just how language acquisition progresses. Let's take a look too for our World Language Essential Standards about what those proficiency outcome expectations are for our DLI programs when we think about our DLI program languages. Here you see the chart from the standards for proficiency outcomes for alphabetic languages in DLI programs. Those include Cherokee, French, German, Greek, Spanish, and Urdu. Take a look because our outcomes for DLI programs in our World Language Essential Standards are based on different grade spans. So for example, in a K2 DLI program, by the end of second grade, we would expect students to be at the novice high or novice mid level, depending on the skill that we're thinking about. This varies a little bit based on what we know about language acquisition within a DLI program. And it can also vary a little bit depending on how you structure your time in the language. So programs, for example, that are full immersion, maybe a 90-10 model or an 80-20 model where they're 90% or 80% respectively in the DLI program language, will build language proficiency at a faster rate than a model that is, for example, 50-50, where 50% of instruction is in the program language and 50% is English. So take a look at this over time. And keep in mind that our proficiency outcome expectations for DLI go from kindergarten up through 12th grade. We do recognize that when students enter middle school, oftentimes our DLI programs decide to switch to things like high school credit courses for their language acquisition courses or language arts courses at the middle school in the DLI program language. And that's okay too, because then there's also guidance for that within our World Language Essential Standards. But overall, if you want to get a view K-12, this is what it would be for alphabetic languages. Likewise, for logographic languages like Chinese and Japanese, you see that we have outcome expectations by proficiency for DLI programs in the state standards. These vary a little bit because we're in a situation with logographic languages where instead of learning an alphabet where a particular letter is associated with a sound, let's say for reading, you're learning different symbols that are associated with meaning to express yourself in the language or to interpret what you read or listen to or view. And so the proficiency outcome expectations are adjusted just a bit for that purpose. Again, take a look, think about how this runs K-12, and consider that when we segue into middle school and then into high school with students from DLI programs, that they might then begin taking DLI program language courses that are high school credit courses. This sets them up well to do things like, take, let's say, Heritage Language 1 and 2 as their language arts courses in middle school, and then be ready for something like a level 3, a level 4, or even, let's say, an AP language course when they reach high school early on in their high school career. So that's something to consider here as we look at these. As before, since we're going to focus on the Learning Tools domain criteria, I want you to download that either from our DLI webinar series Canvas Hub where it's posted, or from these slides if you've got the slides up and you're going through them, or even from the TEL framework page, webpage itself where all of the TEL domain criteria materials are posted. So download a copy for yourself and skim the 3 lettered subcriteria for this session's focus. Remember, LT4 is the teacher provides students with tools and processes to reflect on language growth. Pause this recording for as long as you need to download the handout and get it ready to use. All right, let's look at our TEL criteria for LT4. A is the teacher and students use rubrics to define performance and provide feedback throughout the learning process. Think for a minute to yourself about the rubrics you have in your classrooms and your programs and how they give feedback to your students about the language they're learning and the proficiency they're building in that language, as well as their content knowledge. is the teacher and students use tools to monitor language growth. How are you helping your students think about monitoring their language growth as they move from kindergarten to first grade and first grade to second grade and on up, or even from one unit to the next as they build their skills? C is the teacher and students use tools to document, track, and reflect on performance over time. And we're really focusing in here on language acquisition and language proficiency growth. Consider what tools you use, what examples of student work maybe you keep or you share with a student or keep in a portfolio for them to think about their performance over time. Also think about what you might share with parents or guardians or others, other teachers, for example, in different areas or different grade levels, or even with a program director if you have that kind of structure for your DLI program in your district. One thing to consider for this, and we often get asked this, is about Linguafolio, a form of assessment tool for language learning. And this is a good thing to share with students and to use as a teacher because you can kind of see where students are and you can always encourage them to document and track their performance over time as they grow in their proficiency of the language. All right, so let's think about implementing LT4 in K-12 DLI programs and in our pedagogy in the classrooms and programs that we encourage teachers to use. Just like before, I want you to think about your DLI programs and your classrooms, and then choose one of the sub-criteria that's a professional strength for you. Since we only have 3 sub-criteria this time, we're asking you to pick just one that you feel is a professional strength for you. If you're an administrator, keep in mind that teacher applies to any role, and it might be something like, as an administrator, you're thinking about what you see in your program and what that professional strength is across your program or in teachers maybe who are model teachers that you ask to share with their peers on how to build the components of LT4. In your Qualtrics survey, choose that letter of the one sub-criteria you think is important for K-12 DLI programs or classrooms. Just like before, it can be a professional strength for you, but it doesn't have to be. I want you to choose one of these 3 to focus on to answer the next 2 questions. So in 15 words or less, explain why you think this sub-criteria that you chose is critical for your DLI programs or classrooms. If you chose a professional strength, explain that rationale. If you chose one that isn't a professional strength, explain why that is critical for your DLI programs or classrooms. Then, like before, in 30 words or less now, describe how you'll use this information to inform your practice in the next school year, in 2022-2023. Again, pause as long as you need to complete this information, doing your reflection, you're thinking about this, and sharing that in your survey. Next, we're going to move on to a tool for measuring growth and academic achievement. And we thought about a number of tools we could use here, but we wanted to present a tool, just like we did in the first section, that was readily available and free to everyone. So we chose the Thomas & Collier or TNC Research Executive Summaries. We want to focus in on these because they look specifically at academic achievement of our DLI students in their programs across time. And that's an important thing to consider when we talk about measuring growth over time, whether we're talking about language proficiency growth or academic achievement with content information. You can download the Thomas & Collier Executive Summaries directly from the NCDPI DLI webpage, which is at bit.ly/ncdli-info. You just scroll down when you go over that page to the Additional Resources section and find the Research tab. All 3 executive summaries are downloadable as PDFs from the Google Drive. They're also linked on the DLI webinar series Canvas Hub for this section as well, so you can download those that way too. In addition to the executive summaries, there are additional materials like the full report, which is an extension, usually 40 or 50 pages long, of each executive summary. There's a book excerpt from the North Carolina study and work, And then there are published graphs for further study if you would like that really delve into the academic achievement of DLI students when compared to other students in their schools and districts who are not DLI programs, as well as things like the state averages on academic achievement. All you need though for this asynchronous workshop are the 3 executive summaries, which are very brief. We're going to explore our Thomas and Collier or TNC executive summaries. And specifically in the Qualtrics survey, we want you to look at this section, preview the questions about the different sections of the executive summaries. So there are 3 of them. Each of them is 2 to 3 pages a piece. But preview the questions that you're going to have to answer because we're going to look at the different sections that are in each executive summary, like the background and DLI definitions that the researchers used, the data sample in here in North Carolina for this longitudinal study, the analysis from the researchers, and the significant findings that our researchers posted about our DLI programs. So preview those questions so you know what you're reading for. Then read the 3 executive summaries and respond to the questions as you see them in the survey. After you do those questions, we have a section where you're going to answer several questions, and this time we're giving you 30 to 50 words, so a little bit longer than we have been doing for open-ended questions, but we really want to give you a chance to express yourself and your thinking about these questions. The first is, explain which findings from the Thomas and Collier research are most important to highlight in your local communications about your DLI programs or classrooms. Communicating to the place where your school is located, whether it's a town, a larger city, or even a whole region that you're serving, is important. And you want to communicate and educate people about what's happening in your DLI programs and classrooms. So explain which of the findings from the research would be most important to do that in your local communications. Also, 30 to 50 words, describe how you will incorporate this DLI research information into your local policies, your advocacy efforts, or your stakeholder engagement initiatives during the next school year in 2022-2023. You may, of course, already have extensive information that you share about your local policies with your DLI programs and how students get into them and how they progress K-12, or you may have a lot of information already about advocacy efforts or engaging stakeholders. Even if you only have a little bit of information about that, you can still think about how you want to incorporate DLI research information into those. It could be you're incorporating it in a different way or more completely, or maybe you want to highlight something that you read in the executive summaries that you hadn't really been sharing a lot in your materials with the public. So think about that. And again, as always, pause as long as you need to do the reading of the executive summaries, to answer the questions, and to respond to the prompts that you see here. That's it. You've reached the end of our summer PD for DLI, our asynchronous workshop. Couple of things as we finish out with the wrap up and reminders. First of all, you're welcome to sign up at bit.ly/ncdpi updates if you would like, and get on our NCDPI listservs if you are not already with your email address. By virtue of filling out this survey and submitting it, of course, we will have your email and we'll make sure you've been added to the DLI Educators listserv. But notice that we have several others that impact language learning that you may want to get information on. For example, we have NC Linguafolio that we mentioned before. We have one for World Language Instructors, World Language Education News, Teachers of English Learners, Global Education, and many, many others that you might want to choose from, including ones that have to do with the content you teach in your DLI programs. So things for science and social studies and the arts. And so you can get information from them too. This is just a reminder that your CEU certificates, once you submit your survey, will be sent to you. Your survey responses are considered. And of course, as it says in the survey, you need to have them scored and get 80% or higher for your score, for your grade, if you will. But you can submit your Qualtrics survey with all of your responses up through September 15th of 2022. If you do that successfully, you'll get a certificate of completion emailed to you by the end of September with 3 contact hours or 0.3 CEUs for license renewals. Submissions will be checked periodically, but we'll make sure to get everything back out by the end of September. And as always, just like we said at the beginning, be sure that you've checked with your PSU, your district or charter school, about approving professional development offerings in any format you take them. We thank you very much for participating in this asynchronous workshop. We hope you've learned something that you can take back and use this coming school year in your DLI program, particularly about supporting biliteracy instruction and measuring language growth and academic achievement. Here you see a link, of course, to our NCDPI DLI page that we've already been working from for some of our materials. We're also on Twitter at hashtag DLI and NC. You see our 3 co-leads of the DLI team. You've been listening to me. My name is Anne-Marie Gunter. I'm the World Languages Consultant on the team, but I also have colleagues like Ivana Manthor-Anderson, who's an ESL Title III consultant, and Mary Phillips, who's a K-5 English Language Arts or ELA consultant, who joined me in this work. Our supervisor is Dr. Stacy Daniel. She's the section chief of ELA and languages. And of course, probably most importantly for you, you'll be getting your certificate of completion emailed by Teresa Parker, our administrative specialist for ELA and languages. So do make a note of her email and expect your certificate of completion if you've got everything submitted and it's scored at 80% or higher. Expect that from her by the end of September.